Jungle.
Good day, BN1A. This is Charlie G. Cantutay. Welcome to the Law Enforce 24 Hours. Look on and hear our reports. Sexual harassment is everywhere. It is unwelcome sexual behavior that is offensive, humiliating, or intimidating. It can be written, verbal, or physical, and it can happen in person or online. Anybody can experience sexual harassment regardless of their gender when it happens at work, school, or university. Sexual harassment may amount to a form of discrimination. Due to this issue, the Philippines imposed a law to stop the sexual harassment in the country. It is the RA 7877, an act of declaring sexual harassment unlawful in the employment, education, or training environment and for other purposes. We are going to share information about this law in the Philippines. The Republic Act Number 7877, an act declaring sexual harassment unlawful in the employment, education, or training environment and for other purposes. Be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the Philippines in Congress assembled. The Section 1, the title, this act shall be known as the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995. The Section 2, Declaration of Policy. The state shall value the dignity of every individual, enhance the development of its human resources, guarantee full respect of human rights, and uphold the dignity of workers, employees, applicants for employment, students, or those undergoing training, instruction, or education. Toward this end, all forms of sexual harassment in the employment, education, or training environment are hereby declared unlawful. Section 3. Work, education, or training-related sexual harassment defined. Work, education, or training-related sexual harassment is committed by an employer, employee, manager, supervisor, agent of the employer, teacher, instructor, professor, coach, trainer, or any other person who have authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over another in work or training or education environments, demands, requests, or otherwise requires any sexual favor from the other, regardless of whether the demand, request, or requirements for submission is accepted by the object of the said act. In a work-related or employment environment, sexual harassment is committed when the sexual favor is made as a condition in the hiring or in employment, re-employment, or continued employment of said individual, or in granting said individual favorable compensation, terms, conditions, promotions, or privileges, or the refusal to grant the sexual favor results in limiting, segregating, or classifying the employee which in any way would discriminate, deprive, or diminish employment opportunities or otherwise adversely affect said employee. The above acts would impair the employee's rights or privileges under the existing labor laws, or the above act would result in an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the employee. In an education or training environment, sexual harassment is committed against one who is under the care, custody, or supervision of the offender, against one whose education, training, apprenticeship, or tutorship is entrusted to the when the sexual favor is made a condition to the giving of a passing grade, or the granting of honors and scholarships, or the payment of the stipend, allowance, or other benefits, privileges, or considerations, or when the sexual advances result in an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the student, trainee, or the apprentice. Any person who directs or induces another to commit any act of sexual harassment as herein defined or who cooperates in the commission thereof by another without which it would not have been committed shall also be held liable under the act.
Section 4. Duty of the employer or head of office in a work-related education or training environment. It shall be the duty of the employer or the head of the work-related educational or training environment or institution to prevent or deter the commission of act of sexual harassment and to provide the procedures for the resolution, settlement, or prosecution of act of sexual harassment. Towards this end, the employer or head of office shall a. promulgate appropriate rules and regulations in consultation with and jointly approved by the employees or students or trainer through their duly designated representatives, prescribing the procedures for the investigation of sexual harassment cases and the administration sanctions. Therefore, administrative sanctions shall not be aboard to prosecution in the proper courts for unlawful act of sexual harassment. The said rules and regulations issued pursuant to this subsection A. shall include, among others, guidelines on proper decorum in the workplace and educational or training institutions. B. Create Committee on Decorum and Investigation of Cases on Sexual Harassment. The committee shall conduct meetings as the case may be with officers and employees, teachers, instructors, professors, coaches, trainers, and students or trainees to increase understanding and prevent incidents of sexual harassment. It shall also conduct the investigation of alleged cases constituting sexual harassment. In the case of a work-related environment, the committee shall be composed at least one representative each from the management, the union, if any, the employees from the supervisor rank, and from the rank and file employees. In the case of the educational or training institution, the committee shall be composed at least one representative each from the administration, the trainers, teachers, instructors, professors, or coaches and students, or trainees as the case may be. The employer or head of office, educational or training institution shall disseminate or post a copy of this act for the information of all concerned.
Section 5. Liability of the employer, head of office, educational or training institution. The employer or the head of office, educational or training institution shall be solidarily liable for damages arising from the acts of sexual harassment committed in the employment, education or training environment if the employer or the head of office, educational training institution is informed of such acts by offended party and no immediate action is taken thereon. Section 6. Independent action for damages. Nothing in this act shall preclude the victim of work, education, or training related sexual harassment from instituting of a separate and independent action for damages and other affirmative relief. Section 7. Penalties. Any persons who violates the provisions of this act shall upon convictions be penalized by imprisonment of not less than 1 month nor more than 6 months, or a fine of not less than 10,000 pesos nor more than 20,000 pesos, or both such fine and imprisonment at the discretion of the court. And any action arising from the violation of the provisions of this act shall preclude or prescribes in 3 years.
Separability clause. If any portion or provision of this act is declared void or unconstitutional, the remaining portions or provisions hereof shall not be affected by such declarations. Section 9. Repealing Clause. All laws, decrees, orders, rules, or parts thereof inconsistent with provisions of this Act are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. Section 10. Effectively Clause. This Act shall take effect 15 days after its complete publication in at least 2 national newspapers of general circulation.